Halo. Halo is arguably one of the most influential shooters of the 21st century. It popularized twin-stick movement, introduced party systems and matchmaking to online multiplayer games, and was one of the first shooter franchises that really tried to pull off an epic and cinematic narrative experience. It's interesting to me then that despite how many games have taken ideas from Halo, very few have really tried to take everything that made Halo unique and pull it in a new direction. The few that did were referred to as Halo killers, and like the name implies, they didn't want to be considered spiritual successors as much as they wanted to be conquerors. Killzone, Resistance, Haze. These games weren't made from an appreciation of Halo, but from the desire to topple it. In a world of Souls-likes, Sonic-likes, Zelda-likes, and Metroidvanias, it's kinda odd to me that there's such a lack of games that truly tried to replicate everything that made Halo great. Not from the cynical position of trying to kill Halo, but from a position of love for the games. Well, if I've learned anything over the years, it's that if the big publishers won't do it, there's a good chance the indie devs will. So in my ongoing quest to keep myself occupied during the continued Halo content drought, I've looked to the indie scene to see if anyone there has been brave enough to attempt a Halo-like. But first, I want to specify the criteria that I personally believe constitutes a Halo-like, because it would be so easy to just cram this list full of retro-themed sci-fi shooters and call it a day, which in my research for this video seems to be what most people end up doing. No, Destiny is not a Halo-like just because it was made by Bungie. Through that same logic, Crimson's Steam Pirates would also be a Halo-like. It's not. I know not a lot of people have played that game, and you can't because it's off the market, but trust me, it's not. But I really want to boil down the core elements that I want to see in a Halo-like. In a perfect world, a Halo-like would be defined by a diverse weapon sandbox, floaty movement, 2 weapon limits, recharging health or shields, vehicular combat, and a focus on both PvP and PvE modes, whether it be a full campaign, a firefight mode, or something else entirely. I'm going to be totally upfront with you guys, none of the games I'm going to be talking about today fully check off all these boxes, but most of them do get close. In the end, all the games I'm covering today are ones that were explicitly stated by their creators to be inspired by Halo in one way or another, and some are certainly more obvious than others. So without further ado, let's look at the first one on our list, and it's probably best we get the one you most likely already know out of the way: Splitgate. It's Halo meets Portal. At least that's the elevator pitch that everyone's heard a million times over. I also want to clarify I'm specifically talking about Splitgate 1. Splitgate 2 was far more of a traditional competitive shooter with portals. In fact, probably in general, the less said about Splitgate 2, the better. But I do still enjoy the original Splitgate after all this time, and it does play quite a bit like Halo. The movement and gunplay feels surprisingly similar to Halo Infinite, which is crazy considering this game came out first. In fact, if you hop into the game's No Portals playlist, the similarities really start to shine through. The only thing that really stops Splitgate from being the perfect successor is the lack of vehicles or a PvE mode. But as far as the multiplayer components go, it's all here. It even has a map editor. And while it's not as advanced as Halo's Forge, it's surprisingly intuitive for what it is. I tried making a rudimentary Battle Creek remake, and I'm sure if I had more patience and wasn't working on a video, I could probably make it look halfway decent with the tools given. Splitgate is definitely the most AAA feeling of all the games on this list, but it still falls short. I'm not even going to get into how the UI is pretty much ripped off one-to-one from Fortnite, or how trashy the live service elements are. The point is, the gameplay is fun, and it feels the part. But it's clear the creators wanted to take these games in a very different direction going forward, which is a shame because if Splitgate 2 was this exact same gameplay but with vehicular combat and a campaign added in, then we would have finally had a perfect Halo successor. Exactly what this video is all about. But no, instead we get sci-fi Call of Duty with a battle royale mode. Great job, guys. Oh yeah, and they're shutting the servers down this month. The game might not even exist by the time you're watching this video. Seriously, f these guys. Next up is possibly the oldest game we have on this list, having been released all the way back in 2012 as part of the Xbox Live Indies program before being ported to Steam in 2014. I'm of course talking about the cult classic Murder Miners, a game that asks the question of what if Halo and Minecraft had some sort of twisted homunculus baby. I'm being completely serious when I say this game actually kinda blew me away. First of all, I was not at all expecting to actually be able to find active servers, but lo and behold, people are still actively playing. But after getting into a match, the surprises didn't stop coming. Mechanically, the game does just feel like a fusion of Minecraft and Halo. Movement-wise, it's Minecraft, but gunplay-wise, it's Halo. As far as my checklist goes, it has vehicles, a ton of great feeling weapons, recharging health, and even has a PvE mode in the form of zombie survival. And like Splitgate, the game even has a map editor. Heck, the game even has surprisingly in-depth character customization with a ton of different armor pieces you can unlock as you play, pretty much instantly putting it above even the most recent Halo titles in my book. If you try any of the games in this video, it should be this one. It's only $3 on Steam, and it goes on sale very frequently for way cheaper, so there's really no reason to not check it out. It definitely still has an active community for a good reason. Also, on a side note, this game beat Halo at adding the grapple shot by 9 years.
Grappling hook!
I'm gonna be honest, this next one barely even counts. Jirio is a browser-based multiplayer shooter with some Halo elements, kinda. It honestly feels more like a fusion of Unreal Tournament and Tribes, if I'm being honest. Very fast-paced, a lot of mobility, weapon spawns are very quick, and you can hold on to all of them at once. It's classic arena action on a larger scale, once again similar to Tribes. Or at least, I assume it is because I couldn't find anyone playing. Yeah, unfortunately this game appears to be pretty much completely dead. It's sad to say that though, because this whole thing is clearly a passion project made by one guy who goes by Mert online, and he's been working on this thing consistently for over 7 years. From what I've played, I'd love to get a chance to give this game a try against other people. The jetpack and gliding abilities feel really smooth, and the maps accommodate those abilities really well with a ton of verticality. This game also includes a PvPvE mode called Base Wars that I managed to miraculously get into a full lobby for, only for all the players to be AFK. In this game mode, you traverse a small open world where you fight monsters while also trying to get to the enemy team's base to destroy their light pillar reactor thing. Once again, I wish I could experience this with other people because it seems like it could be some real chaotic fun. While Jirio is the furthest thing from Halo out of all the games I'm talking about today, it's definitely the one that deserves more attention. From the looks of it, the game is still being worked on after all this time. PvE modes are currently in the works, and a Steam version is set to release later this year. I'm gonna keep my eye on this one, and I wish the best to Mert in continuing his work on this game. Hopefully this video can help to get more eyes on it so I can actually play against other people someday. Repulse.io is yet another browser-based shooter, and this one is trying so hard to be straight up Halo. Like, the first map I joined was a map that was clearly a shrunken down Blood Gulch. Like seriously, is this map not just a fusion of Blood Gulch and Valhalla? In terms of mechanics, the movement is there, 2 weapon limits and recharging health are there, all the way down to the focus on vehicular combat and controlling power weapons. It's all here. Repulse's biggest drawback is honestly how much it reminds me of Halo 4 specifically, especially in its shockingly broken progression system. While there are weapons you can pick up on the maps, you can also unlock new weapons and add them to your loadout. Many of these weapons you can spawn with are power weapons, like the Volt Blade, which is essentially this game's energy sword. The whole game feels like a strange fusion of Halo and Call of Duty, even more so than Halo 4 did. The core of the game is Halo, but its progression and loadout system was clearly lifted from COD. The game also has cosmetic microtransactions, which is to be expected from a free-to-play game in the modern day, but on top of that there are also unskippable ads between matches. Repulse is a textbook example of death by 1,000 cuts. The core gameplay is exactly what I'm looking for, but everything surrounding it just diminishes the value of that gameplay. In the end, Repulse is what I'd refer to as a computer lab game. I can see that if I was still in grade school, this would be something that I would open up and play for a bit after I'm done with my work. But it's not something I'd go out of my way to get super into. It's a fun enough distraction, but if you're wanting a deep and balanced competitive shooter experience, this is not what you're looking for. The final game I have for you today is one that's not just a Halo-like, it's also a Half-like, and strangely enough, a Stalker-like. Allegedly. I've never played Stalker, so I can't compare the two, but I saw a lot of people bringing it up while researching the game. It's also probably the best and most underrated game on this entire list. The game I'm talking about is Adica. Now before getting into this, I want to preface by saying that I've only played the demo of the game and still have yet to actually try the full game. But from what I've played, I'm definitely going to check it out at some point, and I recommend you guys do too. Adica is the only Halo-inspired indie that I've found that not only has a full campaign, but is entirely single player. No multiplayer in sight, and frankly, I think it's better off for it. That being said, while parts of this game have clear Halo influences, Adica has taken far more of its identity from Half-Life. Case in point, you have a gravity gun. I mean, technically it's a gravity arm, but it's functionally identical to the gravity gun. In fact, it might actually be an improvement over how this mechanic was done in Half-Life 2. In that game, it was a gun and it was treated as such. You had to take the time to scroll through your weapons to select it before you could start using it. But Adica improves on that by just having it as a persistent ability you always have access to, which makes it totally seamless. Because of that, I definitely took more advantage of this mechanic here than I ever did in Half-Life. This Half-Life DNA also extends to the enemy types, with the military police enemies being almost identical to their Half-Life counterparts, all the way to even having similar chatter and callouts during combat. The game even has enemies later on that are stylistically similar to headcrab zombies. Everything down to even the way that some of the levels are set up, with a focus on puzzles and physics, just feels distinctly like a spiritual successor to Half-Life 2. So, if this game takes so many cues from Half-Life, why am I calling it a Halo-like? Well, first off, the game is split up into episodes. Also similar to Half-Life. But while the first episode is set up like Half-Life, the second episode feels far more like Halo, with wide open sandbox-style levels for huge firefights to take place in. The level design becomes far more open-ended, with multiple ways to approach encounters. Now keep in mind, I've still only played the demo, so I haven't actually experienced episode 2, so take this with a grain of salt. But what's noticeable right from the start is the HUD, which looks straight out of Halo, along with a 2-weapon limit as opposed to Half-Life where you're able to carry everything at once. And for my final point that this is in fact a Halo-like, it's got a needler. Checkmate. So, let's do a quick rundown of this list one more time, shall we? We have a game that doesn't exist anymore, a game that released a decade ago that tried banking off the Minecraft craze, a game that just straight up isn't anything like Halo at all, a game that replicates the worst multiplayer in the series and somehow makes it even worse, and a game that's more Half-Life than Halo. Yeah. A lot of these games are fun, but none of them are true worthy successors to Halo. So now I'm left with the same question I started with. Why are there so few games that try to replicate Halo's gameplay one-to-one? Well, simply put, it's hard. Really hard. Halo has such a distinct identity, from the lore to the art style to the gameplay to the abundance of content in the later games. It makes for an experience that would take so much time and effort replicating that you might as well just make your own thing. There's a reason why Call of Duty clones ended up kinda killing off the trend of the Halo killers. And it's because Call of Duty is just a simpler formula to copy compared to all that goes into making Halo, Halo. Call of Duty is defined by its arcadey yet immersive gunplay with fairly straightforward level structures. It makes sense why even 343 at some point decided to forego Halo's initial formula in favor of the easier COD angle. And because of that, I have tons of respect for all the people that worked on these games. Yes, even the greedy bags at 1047. Trying to create a successor to one of the greatest gaming trilogies of all time is no small feat. Even the people currently in charge of the series stumbled at it. All in all, that's what makes these games that do take cues from Halo worth talking about and worth playing for yourself. They show that Halo's DNA continues to inspire people to try, even with the knowledge that they'll inevitably be compared to such an iconic franchise that redefined an entire genre. Some of these games took inspiration and added their own spin, some of them tried to replicate it outright, and some are just somewhat adjacent, but they all managed to stand on their own while wearing their inspirations on their sleeve like a badge of honor. Fact of the matter is, no game can truly replace Halo, just as no Souls-like can truly replace Dark Souls. Nor should they. That was exactly the problem with the Halo killers. They were trying to supplant Halo rather than show appreciation for it. These games, though, were clearly made from a love of Halo and other similar games. I hope you enjoyed this list just as much as I enjoyed making it, and I hope you give all these games a shot, especially Adica, because
Yo, what about Helldivers 2?
You mean the satirical, third-person, always-online co-op shooter with no story mode that plays nothing like Halo?
Yeah, dude, of course! It's totally like a new Halo game. They're even doing a crossover in the next update!
Yeah, sure. Helldivers 2 is a Halo-like. Whatever.
See, dude, what did I tell you? For democracy!
Why do I even try? Thanks for watching. If you like this video, leave a like and become a pyromaniac yourself by subscribing. Until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.